I'm W. Herbert Doty, moved in here in May of 1988, and I'm 96. I'll be 97 in August. And one of the things at 96, I've had time to think and analyze what has changed in my life. And one of the biggest changes is we slow down. I don't get from here to there as fast as I used to. The other thing is that you begin to decide where you're going to go and why. I used to hike over to Highland and back, and people at Becketwood 30 years ago when we moved here thought that was marvelous. Hike to Highland and back? Well, it was no hike at all for me in those days. Now I find that Minnehaha Falls is a pretty good hike to go over and back. You begin thinking about how far you go. I used to hike down along the falls to the river, and I think about that trip to look at the flowers and so forth along there, and that looks like kind of a long ways to go and go back today for me. Part of that is that in my exuberance and lack of thinking that I was growing older, John and I were coming on our bikes down the driveway, and I was being smart with a driveway door opener there and was working the door opener at the same time I was slowing the bike down, and the bike brake grabbed and I went over the front of it and fell down on the driveway and ended up with a broken leg just below the joint in the hip. And that was one of the first broken bones I'd ever had. And in the emergency room, the doctor said, you know, there's the operating room available. Would you like me to repair it now? So I said, go ahead. So after the operation, he comes back with a statement, you know, it was nice working on 65-year-old bones and muscles on a 95-year-old. I could repair that. So now I've got 7 screws and a plate in my right leg. After a year, I find that my rehab has been, I walk along without any helpers, with any walkers and so forth, and I walk slower in the hall than I used to. And you know, from one end of this building to the other is a pretty good hike now. Hopefully, as you practice more, that strength comes back. But as we age, it doesn't. And I recognize that my will isn't exactly there for what I can accomplish. And I have to recognize what my accomplishments are over what my will says. Your short-term memory is one of the other things. My memory used to be real good for many, many, many things. Our memory works on what we're interested in. Well, in my work, I was interested in addresses, not people's names. I've never been particularly interested in people as such, but projects. In objects I was interested. And one of the family jokes is that my daughter-in-law was a social worker, and she had worked at hospice some. And one of the jokes was that Herb can take you. I work service work among the people in the neighborhood and all, and more than the neighborhood. Much of Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, I was very well acquainted with. And the joke was that we can give you a tour of the city. Herb will tell you what furnace is in that house, and Dorothea will tell you who died there. In my work as a serviceman, I was known as being fairly productive. I could go on a job, diagnose it, and come up with an answer and get it fixed to where it stayed fixed by analyzing what its problem was and how it worked and all. And I find that thought process is slowed down and has blocks in it today. I lots of times find I'm not able to have a successful solution to a problem. Those are rather frustrating as you get older. And it's to recognize what you can do and what you can't do. In other words, I today recognize that you don't come running down the driveway on a grade and push something as a double action on it. You stop, open up the door as a stable area, and go through it rather than trying to go through it on the fly. You learn to limit what you take on. And that's been kind of a hard process in getting older, is to recognize what your limits are. And as we get older, we become more mature. We see how getting along and cooperating with people means success, where being powerful and stubborn doesn't create anything. And that conflict is one of the things that as we get older, we see more of. As we're young, we have the feeling that we've got the power, that we can do it. As we get older, we recognize that there is other forces that operate on us. We somewhat need to fit in. You know, one of the biggest things of getting older is that you can lay in bed in the morning, you know, with a nice, comfortable, warm place to lay there. It's kind of nice to think about it. Shall I get up or don't I need to get up yet? And you lay there a while, sometimes longer than you should. But you get anything done that way? No. Work goes on, and you need to have the will, and that's one of the biggest conflicts. Do I do it? Do I participate in it? Or do I lay back and read like I like to? One of the things that Marge made after we moved into Becketwood, that this was one of the best decisions we made in our life together. We compromised on what we wanted for a place here. We stuck our necks out on how much it cost, but by managing and by looking at things, we have been able to enjoy life here. And Marge was able to spend the end of her days here in Becketwood because it had facilities. She no longer had to climb steps, which bothered her with arthritis. She had friends in a writing group and all that were close that you could walk to and meet with and enjoy. You know, you look at each other, and after a while it gets kind of old. We were married for 57 years and had a good life together. The art department here at Becketwood has been one of those added things that add to life that you don't very often find. We have had people that were artists that manage it, that contribute their time and effort to it. And in a co-op, it's very important that we are part owners of this estate, this living community that we're in. And we're very fortunate that we've had people that contributed in what their art, what their abilities are. And with those arts and abilities, we've been successful in promoting and having a very, I would say, a comfortable life.